Let's see here. So we're going to start out here with 319 and run through chapter 4, verse 8. And we've got Kayan tuto gnosametha hati ek tes aletheas esmen Kayan prosthen autu pesamen tain cardian hemon. And so we have Kai, the conjunction here, and in this, gnosametha. This is just from gnosko. You've got the gamma nu there, and this is a future. And notice it's a middle only verb, so just future, middle indicative, first plural. And in this, or by this, we will know that, remember you have that verb of perception, so typically that's going to be a content hati. And by this we will know that from ek plus genitive, from the truth, as men, we are. Of course, just AME, present indicative, first plural. And in prosthen, before, this is just a preposition. And you won't see this with a compound verb. It's always by itself, but it just means before. And it goes with the genitive. And before him, pesamen, this is from patho. See here, and so patho, if you can read that, okay. But this is a future. You see the sigma there as an indicator, and so this will be future active indicative, first plural. Sorry, this isn't very clear. It's a little hard to get this to write clearly sometimes. So the typical understanding of patho would be I persuade. It could mean I assure. That's part of the semantic range. We would say, and before him, we will persuade, or we will assure our heart, tain cardian. And this is a singular. Of course, this is a plural, so this just has a distributive sense. Everyone's heart. And then we have verse 20. Hati. Now this is a difficult verse here. You have hati, and then another hati, and there's a couple of different ways of understanding what's going on here. Some scribes dropped out this second hati in later manuscripts just because they didn't know what to do with it. But clearly the earlier manuscripts have both. It looks like what's going on is that first hati is actually ha-ti. And you remember in the manuscripts the letters are just right beside each other. There's no spacing. And that may have been construed as a hati, but it really means hati aeon, with reference to whatever, in a sense like that. With ultimately in context it would be whenever. So you have that indefinite sense. An unusual way of saying that, no doubt, but it looks like that's what's going on. Hati aeon. Whenever our heart, kata genosko, now you know this aeon is going to give you a subjunctive, right? So this is just kata genosko. Let's see here. Kata genosko. And notice the elongated vowel. And so it's just a kata genosko, present active subjunctive, right? Third singular, oase. So whenever our hearts condemn us, and really this would be the our, that a would be functioning like the personal pronoun, and so our heart condemns us for causal hati, greater is God, and then you have tes cardia semon, and this is where we have that comparative genitive. Comparative. This is going to go off the screen. I'm going to compare comparative. I got to get a better way of doing this. Comparative. So it's a comparative genitive. Okay, comparative genitive. So we don't say for greater is God of our heart. We'll say than. Right, it's comparing two things. God versus our heart. God is greater than our heart. And kai, genoske, just present active indicative third singular. And he knows panta, all things. So whenever our heart condemns us, beautiful verse here, when we feel condemned by our heart, we realize God is greater than our heart, and He knows all things, right? And so you want to remember, keep in mind this idea of, let's see if I can do this while it's running. Let me see if I can get to this layer here. So keep in mind, we may get, and this is John writing to these believers, and so you can imagine, someone you're looking down just at your own circumstances. You're down here in the deepest, darkest place. Your heart's condemning you, and John's saying, keep in mind, God knows all things. God doesn't just see this moment. God sees the consummation when Christ returns. When Christ returns, and when we will be glorified and have a glorified body, and are perfect in His sight. And he sees back here, he goes to the cross, and he sees when Christ died for us as well. And so this is what God sees, not just this dark moment here. So something we want to keep in mind. Beautiful, very beautiful verse here. Let's see here. All right, moving along. Vocative, beloved. Beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, notice the may, so we know that's a subjunctive there. Of course, that tells us it's going to be a subjunctive also. Kata gnosko, present active indicative third singular, or excuse me, I messed up on that. Present active subjunctive third singular. We have boldness, and this pros would be with. We can be to or toward, but this gives you an idea, just the semantic range of pros. We have boldness with God. Kai, and we have a relative pronoun. Notice the double. You've got the rough breathing and the accent. So that with the aeon, just whatever and whatever. And what do you expect that to be? Subjunctive, right? From aiteo. Whoop. So we have aiteo, and the writing here isn't very clear. I'm going to have to come up with a better system than this. But anyway, aiteo, elongated vowel, so a present active subjunctive first plural. And whatever we ask, lambano, man. What is this? Lambano, right? Lambano. And so this is a present active indicative first plural, lambano. And we will receive from Him. So we will receive it from Him for His commands, His commandments, tevrumen. Now this is tevreo. And notice it's got a contract vowel, and so that epsilon goes up against amen, and that contracts to u. So you see that omicron, upsilon, looks a little weird, but you recognize that. For His commandments we are keeping, and literally the pleasing things, enopion, before Him, poi umen. Again, you've got a contract vowel, poieo. So again, epsilon, and you got that omicron from amen, and it just turns into omicron upsilon, poi umen, not poi amen. So a little contraction there, but just we are doing what's pleasing before Him. Now, obviously, there's an implied understanding, implied condition that when we ask something, it's in the context of God's will. Right? We don't get whatever we want just because we ask God, and that wouldn't be the loving thing to do. So if we had a if you have children, they come up to you and tell you they want something just completely bizarre and unhealthy or even toxic for supper, you're not going to just give it to them, right? And so there's an implied condition here. Whatever we ask, and of course appreciating that it's in line with God's will, we receive it from Him, for we are keeping His commands, and we're doing the pleasing things before Him. Verse 23. And kai haute, let me read this. Estin he entole autu hena pistusomen to onama, my goodness. Hena pistusomen to onamati tu huiu autu Jesu Christu kai agapomen allelus kathos edoken entolein heimim. And we've got a demonstrative here, and this is His command, or His commandment. And this is His commandment, that content, henna, telling us what the commandment is, that we, and what do you expect that to be there? Got a henna, so yeah, that's going to be a subjunctive. From pistuo, and you've got the sigma there, and you've got the elongated vowel. So is that aorist or is it present? Yeah, if you got the sigma there, you know it's going to be aorist. It's an aorist active subjunctive, first plural. And so, and this is His commandment, that we believe in the name, right? Onamati, in the name, tu huiu, of His Son, tu huiu autu, Jesu Christu. So just an apposition here, Jesus Christ. That we believe in the name of His Son, and then appositionally, Jesu Christu, Jesus Christ. And that, right, this is another, it could be indicative, but this is subjunctive, being driven by the henna. And that, and, let's make sure I'm doing that right, that we believe in the name of His Son, Jesus Christ, yeah, and we love, or we are loving one another. So, present active subjunctive, first plural. Just as edoken, this is going to be from, now if you see a delta omicron or a delta omega, usually going to come from didomi. And that's what this is here. This is a kappa aorist, or excuse me, an aorist kappa, I should say. There's no old perfect reduplication there. And so this is just aorist. It's an aorist active indicative, third singular. Doesn't look like it, but those didomies, you kind of just have to get familiar with those, and you will over time. But again, you've got the augment and that kappa, aorist kappa there. And so this is just as He gave the commandment to us. And the article's not there, so maybe a qualitative sense, but it would be probably a definite interpretation there. Let me try that again as far as the reading. And this is His commandment, that we believe in the name of His Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another, just as He gave the commandment to us. And let's tackle 24 here. And the one keeping, now what is this? This is from tereo. Had this earlier. But if you look at this, notice your ending here. Where do you see that? Yeah, you know that's a participle ending. So it's just a present active participle. Notice these three chunks of information. Present active participle. Nominative masculine singular. So three chunks of information. And it's substantive. We've seen a bunch of these, haven't we? And the one keeping His commands, His commandments, in Him He remains. Just from meno, present active indicative third singular. And He, God, in Him. And in this, or by this, or instrumental sense there, and by this, genoskamen, just present active indicative, first plural from genosko. And by this, we are knowing that content, He remains in us. From meno, present active indicative, third singular, oase. And by this, we are knowing that He remains in us. From the Spirit, and relative pronoun, rough breathing, and an accent, which Hamin eroken, which, our verb here, he gave to us. Again, we just did this, but from ditto me, aorist, active indicative, third singular. Let's look at verse 1 quickly here and look at the vocative right off the bat there. God, beloved, me pante pneumati pistuete. Again, this could be indicative, but we see that may there, which is telling us this is we're into the twilight zone here, right? We're no longer in the indicative. So this is a, can you get it? I'll let you struggle with that for a minute. It's not indicative, so yeah, you want to think imperative. It's going to be a present active imperative, and it's going to be second plural. All right, just based on your ending here, you know your paradigms. So, brothers, do not believe, right? Negative, don't believe every spirit. Adversative here, but dakimadzete, and this is also going to be an imperative from dakimadzo. Write this over here, dakimadzo, and you just have the same ending, but, and this is not negated, so it's but test. And you know what? I've got this broken up here. I didn't realize that. So it's going to be, we've got an article there, so hang with me, and let me go to slide 2 here. So we remember the articles here, but test the spirits. But test the spirits. Ek tu theu estin. And really an ellipsis here is like to see if it is from God. And again, this is singular. But as we talked about 50% of the time you'll get a singular verb with a neuter plural. To see if they are from God. Because many false prophets, paloi pseuda prophetai, and this is a really odd looking verb here, ex eleluthasen eistan kosmon. And this is actually from ex erkomai. And it's a perfect, so it looks very odd, but if you remember, it's a perfect, but it has a theta instead of a kappa. So remember your paradigm, kakas ke kamen kate kasi. It's just a perfect, but a little bit irregular. Perfect, active, indicative, and then just third plural. Or excuse me, yeah, get that right there. Third plural. To see if they are from God. For many false prophets have come, eistan kosmon, into the world. All right. Let's see here. This is verse 2. Moving on. We've got en tuto genoskete ta pneuma tu theu, pan pneuma ha hamalage, Yezun Christan in Sarki, eleluthata ek tu theu estin. By this, let's see here. Layer 2. So by this, you are knowing, or you know, just genosko, and don't let that sigma throw you there. Some verbs will have a sigma as part of the lexical form, and of course that's what we have here with genosko. So present active indicative, second plural there with genosko. By this you know, ta pneuma tu theu, the Spirit of God. And then we have an unpacking of this. Every pan, every spirit, and then the relative pronoun there. Notice the rough breathing and accent, which confesses. This is hamalageo. So just present active indicative. Let's see here. Not doing very good with the present active indicative. Third singular. There we go. From hamalageo, every spirit which confesses And notice this is your verb here. And this is, kind of hang with me on this for a minute. This is, let's see here. So you have something like this. You have Jezun Christan in Sarki Eluthata. And that Jesus Christ in the flesh has come is that phrase there from here to here. And in a grammatical sense, that entire phrase is the direct object of that verb, right? Every spirit which confesses this, da 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 da. But notice what you have here. You have Jezun Christan in the accusative. Makes sense. That's the direct object. Every spirit which confesses Jesus Christ. But then you have this participle here. And it's from erkomai. And let's see here. So it's from erkomai. And it is you can see the elthon in there a little bit, but it's a perfect participle. It's a perfect. This software is not acting quite right. Perfect. Perfect. Let's see here. See if I can make this work a little better. So erkomai, and then you've got notice thata. This is actually a perfect passive participle, and it's a masculine accusative singular. And if you remember from elementary Greek, you had kos, quia, kas. Then this would be third declension, katas, kati, kata. It's a similar ending, but instead of the kappa, you've got a theta. And so it is a perfect passive masculine accusative singular ending there. And it's an irregular participle, no doubt. But I want you to appreciate that it's in the accusative. And so you have an accusative here and the accusative participle. And I think the best way to understand this is see this participle as a participle for indirect discourse. Indirect discourse. We had this with the infinitive as well. And again, indirect discourse is going to be like every spirit that confesses that and that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. That's you're not giving a direct quote. You're just giving an indirect quote, an indirect phrasing, right? As opposed to quote unquote da 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 da. So indirect discourse is what I think is going here with this participle. They're both in the accusative, but basically you're treating that first accusative like the subject, and then the participle like the verb. Jesus Christ has come in the flesh, which is speaking against these false teachers that seem to have denied that Jesus had come in the flesh. But let's unpack this a little further. Every spirit which confesses, and then we have this indirect discourse, Jesus Christ has come in the flesh, is, just from a me, present, active, indicative, third singular, is ek tu theou, is from God. So by this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit which confesses Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. All right, let's move on. Kai, pampnuma, hame amalage tan Jezun, ek tu theou uk estin. Kai tuta estin ta tu ante Christu, ha ake kaate, hati erketai, kai nun in to cosmo estin ede. Ede, excuse me. And before I move on, make a note of that verse 2 as well. What kind of participle is this? That may be on the quiz for that I'll post and that you'll take. What kind of participle is that? And I think what's going on there again is participle for indirect discourse. All right, let's take this one apart here. Verse 3, and every spirit, again, relative pronoun there, which, and you have does not confess Jesus And this is a bit unusual because there's no reason that this should be may. This is the indicative. And so this is a good example of just sometimes Greek doesn't follow the rules. It's Koine Greek, and for some reason he used may here. We should see uk, really, with that kai, and because you have a vowel here and a rough breathing mark. But John went with may here, which is an interesting just departure from the expected rules. Every spirit which does not confess, and again this is hamalageo, present active indicative, third singular, Jesus, uk estin is not ek tu theu, is not from God. And this is, and we have to have an ellipsis here of spirit right here. And this is the spirit, ta pneuma, of the Antichrist, which akekaate, and you can see the lexical form there, akuo. This is the perfect. You may have memorized akekoa in your elementary Greek, and this is just a perfect active, indicative, second person plural. So here, and this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard that content, he comes, or he is coming, has a future sense there. Kai nun into cosmo, and now in the world is, right? Already, very important word there, and now already is in the world. And so the Antichrist, in the sense that these false teachers are proclaiming his message there, he's already in the world. And let's see, verse 4. Humes, you, emphatic there, are from God. And you recognize este, and that's ami, present active indicative, second person plural. So you are from the world, teknia, children, and nene kekate autus. This is nikao, and you see the reduplication there. You see the kappa alpha. So this is just a perfect active indicative, second person plural. And you have overcome them. You have conquered them. 4, causal, greater is, and then we have a ha en humin, a ha ento cosmo. The in you, and so what we have here is this article, and it's functioning like it's a substantizing article, isn't it? It's the in you one, literally, right? So you want to appreciate how that article can turn like anything into a noun, right? And that's what's happening here. Ha in humin, and then we see the same thing here. Ha into cosmo. Greater, for greater is the one in you, and then we have a. This is just a comparative particle. Than ha into cosmo, the in the world one. So for greater is he that is in you than the one in the world. And this particle here, that that comparative particle, I do want you to be on the lookout for that on the quiz. There's 2 ways we can say than or make a comparison in Greek. One is with this eta, like that. Just means than. And the other, if you remember, is, I hope you're picking this up here. Let me come up a little bit. And the other is with the genitive of comparison, right? So we have a genitive of comparison. So you could put something in the genitive in the context. You wouldn't say of, you would say than. So 2 ways there, and this is just one with this eta comparative particle. All right, well, let's move on to verse 5 here. Let's see here. Autoi, autoi, ek tu cosmu. Let's do it this way. Asin, dia tuta ek tu cosmu, la lucin kai ha cosmos, auton akue. And translation here, they, and we have asin, just from ami, present active indicative, third plural. And you should be recognizing these ami verbs. But they are ek tu cosmou, from the world. Dia tuta, and we would say on account of, something like that. They are from the world. Because, maybe that's a better way to do that here. Because from the world, la lucen, they are speaking. And this is just laleo, to speak, in just a present active indicative, third plural. Because they are speaking from the world. And kakosmos, the world, and here's my verb, akue, hears them. And you see akuo there, and that's just present active indicative, third singular. And notice too that it's taken a genitive direct object. And about half the time akuo will take a genitive instead of an accusative. So some verbs will take a different case than just accusatives. You have to be on the lookout for that sometimes. Don't let that throw you. All right, verse 6. Moving along here. All right. Hemes ek tu theu esmen ha genoskon tan thean akue hemon has uk estin ek tu theu uk akue hemon ek tu genoskamen ta pneuma tes aletheas kai ta pneuma tes planes. And let's translate it here. We got the pronoun right at the beginning. We are from God. Esmen, a me, present active indicative, first plural. Ha genoskon, the one knowing. Now this is just genosko. You see that. And you've got a participle ending there. And we've seen that a bunch. Substantival participle. Present active indicative. Masculine nominative singular. Again, 6 parts of information there you need for a participle. And the one knowing, tantheon, God, hears, and notice how this is your entire subject, hagenoskon tantheon, right? In a real sense, like this is your direct object of the participle, so it's in the accusative. But at a broader level, this entire square here is the subject of this verb. The one knowing God, right? Then your verb from akuo, present active indicative, third singular, hears us, taking a genitive direct object. And then you have an implied he here. And he, relative pronoun, who uk estin is not from God, uk akue hemon. He does not hear us. From this, we know, or you could say by this, ek tutu, genoskamen, we are knowing, ta pneuma tes aletheas, the spirit of truth, and the spirit of error, something like that. And you have a genitive in both of these cases, tes aletheas and tes planes. It's interesting because you have a genitive, what would that be? Really it's an attributive genitive, isn't it? Attributive genitive, because it's the spirit of truth, is the true spirit. And the spirit of error would be like the false spirit, true spirit and false spirit. So just an attributive genitive. So be aware of that for the quiz as well. What kind of genitives are those? And let's see here. I think I've broken another verse up here. Well, let's go to verse 8 here, and we'll stop in this video. Beloved, agapetoi, agapomen, allelus, hati he agape ek tu theu estin, kai pas ha. Let me just tackle this. I've got to pull up another slide for the rest of it. Beloved, and what's going on here? Is this an indicative or a subjunctive? Right, elongated vowel, but it's a contract vowel, so it could be either. In context here, this looks like a hortatory subjunctive. So we'd say, beloved, let us love one another. Right? So this would be present, active, subjunctive, first plural. Beloved, let us love one another. Reflexive pronoun. Hati, causal. For love is from God. And often you'll get an article with an abstract noun there. So it could be just an abstract use of the article there. For love is from God. And we have kai pas ha. Let me pull up this next layer here if I can. Let's see here. Do I have it? There it is. And so we do have a ha here. And remember you had the so you have ha there, and then the pas was also here. So for everyone loving, right? For the one who loves, maybe for everyone who loves, that's what we want to say there. Now notice that you have a participle here, participle ending from agapao. So just present, active, indicative, masculine, nominative, singular. Again, substantive use of the participle there, the one loving. So everyone loving, gegenetai, ektutheu, kai genoske tan thean. We see the reduplication here, and I've got double nu. So you may be tempted to think about genomai maybe, but this is, when you see that double nu, you're dealing with genao. And so this would be reduplication. So you got perfect, passive, indicative, and then third singular from genao. So notice the one loving has been born, right? Passive sense. And knows, genosko, present, active, indicative, third singular, and knows God. And so it's interesting, you think about verbal aspect, and you've got present, and you've got past. And so you have this idea of the one who is loving, present sense, but then you have has been begotten, from God, right? I think I didn't translate that clearly earlier. For everyone who is loving has been begotten from God and knows God. So perfect verbal aspect there. You have the completed action, but ongoing results, having been begotten. And then you see that present continuity, progressive sense with the present tense verb. All right. Verse 8. And then we have ha, me, agapon. You expect me there. We're dealing with a participle. And so, of course, that may would just, it's in the middle, but that's very often you'll see that the article and the participle broken up. So still a substantive use of the participle. The one not loving, uk egno tan thean, hati hatheas agape estin. Now you see the verb here is gamma nu. You know it's genosko. And so that's a giveaway. So genosko. But what's going on here? We've got, looks like a augment here. But then remember that this has a very odd ending, because a second aorist will take imperfect endings. So that's typically on, S-A, right? But this is going to be on, O-S-O, and this is the third singular. So it's going to be aorist, active, indicative, third singular. And we could say that, and the one not loving did not know God, but that doesn't quite work. So we have to nuance that a little bit. It has more of a ingressive sense. You'll learn more about these terms when we get to tenses, but has not come to know God is probably better. Or it could be more of a gnomic sense. Remember we talked about gnomic, true, more of a timeless truth, and that may be what John is thinking there. The one not loving doesn't know God, right? It's just a timeless truth. For God, estin, eimi, is love, agape.